Thank you. My name is Ginny Peacock, and I am an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I'm here because I don't want to drink again. And I would like to thank the committee for asking me to participate as a young people speaker. What were they thinking? I'm going to be 60 next year, so I was completely baffled when I got asked to participate, but I said yes. So, aren't these kids cute up here? I'm old enough to be their grandmother. And then somebody from the committee said, yes, but, you got sober at a really young age. I said, well, I got sober when I was 32 years old, almost 27 years ago. But today that's not even young, and I'm sitting next to Kevin, and he's 32 now, and he got sober when he was 16, so... I'm sure he'll be up here speaking, any year now. I'm really sorry they're not filming this. I said to Kevin, I bleached my teeth for nothing. I was like... I know the traditions. It will be my job today to try to carry the message to one person in the room. So if I've helped one person today, then I've done my job. And, if you're new or used and you're here today, at prime sun time to hear me, you must be really sick. That's all I could think of. I said to Barbara, we're sitting at the pool, and I said, I have to go speak. Who on earth would leave the pool to go to a meeting? And I said, just the sick ones. And here we are. My sponsor always speaks at a 2 o'clock meeting in the desert, and plenty of people go to that. So, I'm just very, very grateful to be alive and sober today. And what it used to be like and what happened and what it's like now. It all began in Indiana. I grew up in an alcoholic family. My father was a town drunk. He bootlegged gin during the Prohibition. I grew up in a town of 6,000 white people in a town called Kendallville, Indiana. It is still 6,000 white people. The water tower says the world takes what Kendallville makes. And they took me, so... my story's sort of like the movie The Hoosiers, where, the whole town goes to the basketball game on Friday night, and my brother was a basketball star. I was the cheerleader. My dad was like Dennis Hopper in the movie. He came to the games drunk. I grew up in saloons with my dad growing up. He drank Juries, and he bought it by the case. He wore one of those hats, not one of those baseball hats, but one of those sort of fedora-looking hats. And he smoked non-filtered Camel cigarettes. And, his fingers were orange, and everyone in my family drank. We just drank when you came to our house. If you came over to see Ick and Helen, my parents would say, want a drink, even if it was the milkman. It was just anyone, do you want a drink? And alcohol was around. I think, when I was very young, Sandy Eddy, a friend of mine down the street, we turned the lights off when my dad was passing out on the sun porch and drank out of his Jury's bottle. But, I don't much remember drinking until high school. And I remember in high school I started to drink. I felt very odd in my family. I felt like I was always sort of conceived in Krypton and dropped in this very odd family in Indiana to grow up. And I spent a lot of time getting away from the house, and I was very popular in school. I won the 8th grade American Legion Citizenship Award, and it was downhill from there. And I became a cheerleader. I was a cheerleader for 6 years, KKKVI, I just, fire, water, fire. I loved it. I could be up in front of the school, and I was very skinny. I was very flat-chested. The guys, called me Sag as a joke. And what happened to me was sometime like around my senior year in high school, I had a 49 Plymouth. I took to get an orange-flavored vodka and smoking Salem cigarettes. And one night, a bunch of my girlfriends and a couple guys on the football team, we went out and we decided we would spray paint a bridge viaduct, KHS, class of 60. and I drew the short straw, and so I was suspended over the side of the viaduct, by my ankles, and I spray painted it upside down, KHS, class of 60. And we thought it was really fabulous. And what happened was all the other classes started to spray paint, and they spray painted barns, over chew mail pouch and all. They just spray painted, and so it was sort of set off this wave of graffiti over northern Indiana. And so the guys on the football team were bragging about it in the locker room one day, and the coach overheard them, and they got called in to the superintendents, and they were, you have to tell us. So they gave all of our names, and our parents were called in on an afternoon, and we had to forfeit our driver's licenses. We could not drive. I had to surrender my pom-poms. I could no longer be a cheerleader, in front of the school body. I was a disgrace. And they told me that I couldn't be Lady Macbeth in the spring play, and that one really irritated me. And so I just took to smoking cigarettes and drinking orange-flavored vodka till the end of the school year. And I said to my mother, they're never going to take me alive, and I'm going to leave this hick town, and I ain't ever coming back. And I went away, and I went away to Bloomington, Indiana, to Indiana University in 1960. And I was there for the next 14 years until I got sober in 1974. And alcohol didn't impair my studying one bit. Before I left town to go off to college, my family doctor said, Virginia, I'm going to give you a little something that will help you study. It's a little diet pill, and this will help you stay awake at night. And it did. And I got to college, and I joined a sorority. I'm a Delta. I'm a Tri-Delt. I had a sorority sister who'd worked in a pharmacy in Downers Grove, Illinois, and she said, I know how to write scripts. And I said, So she said, if you go to the local doctor and steal a prescription pad, I can write them, we can take them, and we can sell them. So, away I went to the local doctor. They put you in that little room for 20 minutes to half an hour. I stole prescription pads. I stole the physician's desk reference. And I went back to Karen, and Karen started writing them, for Dexedrine and Benzedrine, and we were taking them and we were selling them out of the second floor of the Tri-Delt house. And we were very, very popular, Karen and me. And, I had a cooler in my room. I drank Cutty Sark because that was the thing to drink then, and we drank Beefeaters. I drank anything. We just always had a cooler in the room, and we played bridge, and, we would go to dinner and we wouldn't be hungry, and, Mother Hannah would ask what was wrong, and we would not say anything. We were just sucking our mouths, and we would go back up to our room and we'd smoke cigarettes and we'd play bridge and we'd drink, and, till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, and we just take we'd go down to the kitchen, break into the kitchen, fry some eggs, go up, take a mouthful of pills, fall asleep for a couple hours, and then, boing, wake up and go off to class, suck in our mouth for the whole day, and then come home at 4, and start drinking to take the edge off. And, drugs are a part of my story. I'm a speed freak and an alcoholic. I only identify as an alcoholic because it's redundant to say I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I'm an alcoholic, and alcohol is a drug, and it sort of covers everything. I love to drink. I absolutely love to drink, and if alcohol still worked for me, I'd still be drinking. I played, and I partied, and I was popular, and guys liked to take me out. I was a great date. I never threw up. I never passed out. And I had lots of pills, and I was very, very popular. And Karen and I dated these 2 guys who were Phigams, and they had guns. And this was like 1962, 63, long before, kids were shooting kids. And we would go out into a cornfield and shoot bottles, and Karen took the gun once back into the house, and she got drunk one night, and she was, walking up and down the halls with this gun because they weren't going to let her be president of the house, and everybody got all upset, and I don't know why. And they came to me and they said, Virginia, you're Karen's roommate. Give us the gun. I said, no, I'm not going to do that because you'll lift her pin and you'll throw her out of the house. They said, no, Virginia, we promise you we won't. So I gave them the gun, and they lifted her pin and they threw her out of the house. And that really irritated me, too. So I took 9 of my sorority sisters. I quit the Tri-Delt house. I moved off campus. I moved into an apartment house. I changed my major from, speech and hearing therapy to Slavic languages and literatures. And I got a job in a local bar on Kirkwood Avenue called Nick's English Hut. I got a green book bag. I got, all the books, Allen Ginsberg, Ken Kesey, Kerouac, Naked Lunch. I'm like, whoa. I hung out in this bar because I worked there, and in this bar in the front table, there was a table up front, sort of like the Algonquin Hotel in New York, and all these guys would come in every day who were philosophy majors, and they all rode BMW bikes, and they were big and burly and bearded, and they sat up front, and they were reading Aldous Huxley, and they were talking about taking lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD, and I thought they were really, really, really cool. So I wanted to be like them. So, I got a motorcycle. I didn't grow a beard, but I did. I got the motorcycle. And, I was riding my bike one night, and I met another woman on a motorcycle, and she sort of cut me off and came back and said to me, I thought I was the only woman in this town that rode a bike. And I said, well, obviously you're not. And she said, well, my name's Barbara, and, I fell madly in love with her. It was like she was a heroin addict and an alcoholic, and she rode a bigger bike than mine, and it was 1964, and this was, long before lesbians were on the cover of Newsweek, and long before Ellen had a show, lost a show, there was no Katie Lang, there was no Will and Grace, there was nothing. There was still, the love that dare not speak its name. So we decided we would, shoot up and go over to Paris and live like Gertrude and Alice. And so we took off for Europe. And I told my parents I was going to go study at the Sorbonne University. Of course, I had no intention of studying. Barbara taught me how to shoot dope. And, we're drinking and we're rolling some guy on the Audubon. And, we got to Paris and she said, I don't think I want to be a lesbian. Oh, I was like, now I was really irritated again. And so, so we hitchhiked back to London, to Heathrow Airport. We had this huge fight, and she punched me out and flew home. And so I called Maynard, my motorcycle mechanic, because my grandparents had given me a lot of money for graduating from college in 1964 with a BA, in Slavic languages and literatures. And so they think I'm studying, in Paris, so they gave me all this money, and I sent for Maynard, my motorcycle mechanic, and I flew him over, met him in London. It was 1964, the mods and the rockers, the mods, wore those cute little mini skirts and boots and all that stuff. And Maynard and I wore those full black, Barber jackets and leather pants. And I went up to Birmingham, and I bought him a 500cc Velocette single bike. A black bike with a black touring fairing, and we hung out with the rockers for several months, running around, going up to the Busy Bee Cafe, all this stuff, Liverpool, John Lee Hooker, and it was great fun, and I was, selling Purple Hearts on Trafalgar Square, and we're drinking, and it was fun, and we decided that we would go down to Spain, and we went down to Spain, and I got to tell you, this bike, it's a bike from, 1964, when back then you had to start a bike by kicking it. And you kicked this pedal down, and then you had to quick get your leg, out of the way, or else it would, break your calf in half. And I just was saying that for all of you people that turn your little key out there in the parking lot on those bikes. We were really butch then, and we went down to Spain. I took in all these gypsies. I rented a 5-bedroom house. I took in all these people, and then there was a dock strike. We had to fly the bike back to Houston. We flew home, and Maynard left me. But in that year that I was gone, Barbara, the woman that I had been madly in love with, married a guy in Bloomington, Indiana named Junior Peacock. And, well, honey, don't laugh. When I got home, she divorced him, so I married him. So Barbara moved to San Francisco into the Haight-Ashbury, and Junior and I moved down to West Baden, Indiana, about, 10 miles from French Lick. And Barbara lived in the Haight and started sending us bags of meth crystal in books, the God That Failed, books that, they didn't have dogs then sniffing it out either. And Junior and I moved down to West Baden, Indiana to live, off the land and get healthy. And we're speed freaks now. And, there had been this laundromat in Bloomington, Indiana. I thought of this today when I was talking to this guy, Rooster. There was a laundromat in Bloomington called Speed Queen. And I loved the laundromat. And I went every time, and they had little glasses that had stripes that said Speed Queen on them. And every time I went to the laundromat, I stole a glass. They put them out to measure your soap in. So, our house, the only dishes we had were like Speed Queen glasses. And, but some of the things I don't miss, on those tables where you fold your clothes, if you came in and I was particularly having a bad day, it was right across from a liquor store, but you could find me over on the folding table. And Junior hung drywall. Let me tell you, he hung it really quickly. And I would turn the pockets of his pants inside out before I ever put his pants in the washing machine, because you would find me over, on the folding table just sucking the inside of his pants to get pieces of Dexamil and whatever it was. I was just always find whatever I could. And then I would go across the street and get myself a bottle of Gordon's vodka with the orange screw cap. And, it's just how we lived. And we decided we would get really healthy and we'd go down and live off the land in southern Indiana. So we went down and we bought 19 acres. And Max and Linda bought land over there, and Dick and Diane bought land over here. And we bought a house that didn't have any, kitchen or bathroom to it, but it had water. So we had a garden hose. So, I would just take the dishes and throw them out into the yard and turn the hose on them. I didn't have a shower. So I got a job teaching school in Salem, Indiana, junior high school English in 1968. And from 1968 to 1974, until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I never drew a sober breath unless I was locked up in a mental institution, incarcerated in a jail, or locked down, strapped down somewhere. And, it just wasn't pretty at all. I had to drink. And I had to drink, I had to drink. I could not stop drinking. I drank on a daily basis. I was a blackout drinker. I drank around the clock. I drank vodka because I knew you couldn't smell it. I drank 1 to 2 quarts of vodka a day. I drank a half pint of vodka, driving my car over to Salem, Indiana in the morning. And I had one of those great alcoholic cars with no floorboard, and one headlight goes this way and one goes over here. And it had a stick shift. You had to participate in your driving. I just hated that shit. And I would have the car windows down because I couldn't stay awake, and I'd passed out the night before, and I was teaching school in the same skirt all the time. And, we had 12 hens and a rooster, Donald. I would sell, 3 dozen eggs for $1. And sometimes I'd forget to change my shoes, and I'd go to school, and I still had the shoes with the chicken shit on them, and the skirt that I'd wore for, the whole year. And every now and then I would change the top if I thought of it. And I would stand outside the classroom, and Mr. Hunt, the principal, would come over, and he would stand next to me, and he'd say, "Well, good morning, Mrs. Peacock. How are you today?" And I'd say, "I'm just fine, Mr. Hunt." And I would have maybe 2 black eyes, or my mouth was all swollen from Junior beating me. I married a man who just beat me and beat me and beat me. And, I don't know why. I would tell him I was going out for groceries on Friday, and I would come back on Tuesday. And he was mad, and he was a violent drunk, and he would beat on me, and if he kicked me, I would kick him back, and I kicked him back once, and I couldn't walk for 2 or 3 days. So, we would just shoot drugs, and we would drink, and around the clock, once he was beating on me, and he broke my eardrum in the left side of my head, and, you know, I didn't want to hit him back, so I just picked up lamps and books and whatever was in the house, and I just broke out all the windows in the house. I mean, just hit all the glass, you know, that tinkling of glass. And we had these 12 hens and that rooster Donald, and, you know, there's no glass in the window, so they just came into the house with us. And we had mulberry trees, so the chickens ate the mulberries. They came in the house. They just shit purple all over the house. And, you know, all we're doing is like hiding our booze and hiding our dope, and he's going off to hang drywall, and I'm going off to teach junior high school English. And I finally thought, you know, I can't do this anymore. This man's just beating me to a pulp. And so I left him, and I went home to Kendallville, Indiana, where my father was dying of alcoholism, and my father was very sexually abusive with me, and I knocked him out of a chair, and the next thing I know I was being handcuffed, and a sheriff was taking me away, and my mother was saying, "It's for your own good, honey." She had just committed me to a mental institution. So away I went to Oaklawn Psychiatric Center. She billed me for it, too, and $10,000. And away I went, you know, to this treatment place. It wasn't really treatment. It was a loony bin, and it had barbed wire, and it was the Vietnam War, and people were doing shock treatments, and, you know, they wanted to talk to me, and I had tracks up and down my arms, and I was a lesbian, and I drank 1 or 2 quarts of booze a day, and, you know, they were like, "Woo." And, you know, they finally released me. I tore up bingo night and the roller skating parties too much, and they said, they told me I didn't respond to treatment, and so after about 8 or 9 months, I got out, and I went back to Bloomington, Indiana, because it was the only place I knew, and if we were going to be gay in the state of Indiana, it was the only place to be as well. And so I went back to Bloomington, and I moved in with 8 or 9 drag queens, and I got a job teaching in a parochial school for Sister Rose Claire, and she hated me. I mean, absolutely hated me. My students liked me, but she didn't. And the teachers would come to pick me up at about 7 o'clock in the morning in a teacher pool, and I would get into the car with a half pint of vodka and an open can of beer. And no one ever dared to turn around and say, "Virginia, do you think you should be drinking at this hour? Or, you know, maybe you have a problem." I mean, you know, I learned to do more than just hang up these queens' dresses. I mean, I had a mouth on me that wouldn't quit. And if you said anything to me, you know, you would be in tears before we got to the corner. So people just left me alone. And I carried a big bag, just like I still do. And it was big enough to put a bottle of vodka in it. And I drank at school. I drank, you know, I would go to the bathroom and I would drink. And you know, I finished that job. I got a stint in a RCA factory in Bloomington, Indiana, when I was living with Lady Jane. And, you know, it was on an assembly line, and this, you know, a frame is coming by, and you've got a hot iron, and you have to thread this solder, and you have to hit 13 spots on this set while it's going by, and then the next one's coming. And I was so strung out and so hungover, I would miss them, and I would get off my stool, and all the women would yell, "Join us down, join us down," and they'd all get off and try to help me, and the foreman would come and say, "You know, you're really not any good at this," and go to the dispensary, and I would just go in the bathroom, and I'd slam that stall, and I would just drink that vodka, and I thought, "Oh my God, I can't even do this job." And then I was a Democrat, and which was very contrary to my mother, who was, you know, chairman of the Republican Party in Noble County. And I had, of course, become a Democrat just to spite her because I hated her. And so the mayor's office decided way back, it was when they were going to put women in non-traditional jobs. And so one of the non-traditional jobs was driving a bus for the city of Bloomington. So I asked to do that. So they gave me a job as a Muni driver, which is really like my last job of gainful employment. And I drove the bus drunk. I drank on the bus. You know, I just I drank. And you have to remember I'm drinking 1 to 2 quarts of vodka a day. And my friend Melanie worked at the switchboard for the city, and she would call me at about 5 o'clock in the morning to get up. And I would get up, whatever I'd passed out in the night before was what I wore to work. I always wore the same clothes. I never took them off. I never laundered them. They called me the big wrinkle at work. And the only thing I would do would be I would have enough presence of mind to grab a different shirt. And so when I got out there and my bus, had a 45-minute run to the mall. And when I got to the mall, there was a Super X drugstore. So I would go into the public restroom. I would take the Bloomington Transit shirt off, put the other shirt on, and go into the Super X drugstore. And they'd say, well, good morning, Virginia. You're not working today. I'd say, no, it's my day off. And I'd buy a quart of Gordon's vodka. And I would stop in the mall at the Orange Julius and ask for the tallest cup of ice they had, get a lid and a straw. I'd go back into the bathroom, fill that cup up with ice, fill it up with vodka, put the lid on it, take that shirt off, put the Bloomington Transit shirt back on, and go and get on my bus. And it was enough to quiet the shakes that I had. I shook all the time if I didn't have a drink. I had to drink. And, I had a tape player with me, and I had 2 tapes for the entire year. The Brandenburg Concertos and Olivia Newton-John. And these kids probably don't even know who that is. So come 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm driving my bus, a lot faster than I was at 6. And, people get on my bus I didn't like. I just brake real hard and throw them all over. I became filled with self-hate and self-loathing, and so I didn't like anybody. And, and my hair hurt. Sometimes, I just needed a drink, and it would be winter, and it would be 17 below zero, and there would be these 2 old women that go to Urban Renewal, and they just talk all the time. They really made my hair hurt. And I would see them, and so I would change that header sign that says garage out of service. And then I would just pull over, and they would say, what's wrong, Virginia? And I'd say, well, I have to go into the garage. Your bus will be along any minute. And there wouldn't be another bus for 45 minutes. And I didn't care. I just left them in the snow, and I would go pull my bus over, put my feet up on the dash, turn up Olivia Newton-John, and just drink. And I didn't care, and I continued to drink because I hated the person that I'd become, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop drinking. And somewhere around April Fool's Day in 1974, I must have gone out to McDonald's for something to eat, because on the way back, I hit 12 parked cars, utility pole, put the power out on the north side of Bloomington for about, 12 hours, and I took the corner off a house. And I just backed up, and I took off to go home, and the fire chief was inside. He was having coffee with his mother, and he was not at all pleased. And so by the time I'm parking my car with the smoke coming out of it in front of my house, here come the police, here comes the sirens. I got out of my car, I did what any good alcoholic would do. I ran to the front door. And they arrested me. They arrested my lover, Sarah, for interfering in my arrest. I had a blood alcohol count of 0.33. So they put me in the drunk tank, and I got out. And I got a bicycle. That car didn't work anymore, so I got a bike. And I had a bicycle with a wicker basket. And I would drive that bicycle down to the first liquor store that opened in the morning in Bloomington, Indiana. It was called Brent's. And it would open at 6 o'clock. It's amazing, drunk or, totally wasted. I knew what liquor store opened when. It's just like, you go to a meeting now, and all the homeless people, they know exactly when the AA meeting's time it starts, what food's there. I knew what liquor store was open. And I rode my bicycle down there, and I got myself a bottle of vodka, and I would pass it around to all the wino friends of mine, and we'd hit a few belts back, I'd throw up, and then I would screw that cap on. I would go home, and I would sit in my apartment, and I was just always trying to figure it out. I was seeing shrinks, asking them, why do I drink so much? Somebody help me, why do I drink so much? And people would say, well, Virginia, you be you, and then you have a conversation with your mother. Be your mother here. And I'm like, I would be so loaded going to these sessions. Nothing happened, and of course I continued to drink, and I continued to lie about it, and I continued to hide booze, and by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd had 14 car wrecks, and I'd broken all the bones in the right side of my face, and, just this and that, and driven, I'd forced a farmer off the road once. I mean, I just got here. And what happened was I was a regular patient at Bloomington South, which is like the psych ward. And I would go there all the time trying to ask these doctors why I drank so much. I knew there was something wrong. And what happened to me was Sarah my lover talked me into going into the hospital. And I walked into the hospital with a blood alcohol count of 0.489. And pretty much 50% of my blood was booze, and I walked in with that same attitude, keep your hands off me, you're all losers, they'll never take me alive. And, I just walked in there with my profound arrogance, and on the fourth day I had a grand mal seizure. And I flopped around the floor like a chicken. They took, the tongue DTs for 7 days and 7 nights. And people came to see me, and, but Sarah came and she said, you were awful. They wish they had filmed it. You spit in people's faces. You pulled the IVs out with your teeth. And I said, Sarah, all I remember from that experience was that there was a rock band practicing in the hospital. And I kept saying I was going to sue them when I got out of there because they were interfering with my sleep. And she said, you were awful, awful. I said, well, I felt like I was, locked up in some mental institution, where they rolled me out every day, tied in a wheelchair. And people said, good morning, Miss Peacock. And I couldn't talk because I'd lost the ability to talk, I was like a wet brain. And, I got out of that hospital, and did I quit drinking? No. I went right out, and I bought a quart of vodka, and I drank it just like it was water. And I got all nervous, and Sarah got all nervous and called the doctors, and the doctor said, just keep her moving, don't let her sleep. Just keep her moving for the weekend so she won't have another seizure. So Sarah took me down to Josette and Led's farm down in Paoli, Indiana, and it was like 100 degrees, 115 humidity. They were curing cottage cheese. It was dripping over here, and I was just like, the sweat was just pouring off of me because it was totally detoxing. And I remember she kept walking me up and down these bean fields, and I just cried out, God help me, somebody help me, I can't quit drinking. And I just cried the whole weekend. And come Monday, I still worked for the city. However, they didn't want me driving a bus anymore, but they had me working on the street department, painting curbs yellow for $2.50, and that was my job. And that day my paint crew took a break in a diner where we go for biscuits and gravy. And inside that diner was this woman whose name was also Virginia. She was a hairdresser in Bloomington, and she said, come here, sit down, how are you? I heard you were in the hospital. And it was as if the same God that I had screamed out to and asked for help over the weekend showed up, and I just blurted out, Virginia, I'm drinking again. And I'm really scared. And she said, well, she told me this little story about the widow Hahn, this florist that we knew, and his boyfriend had gone off to chit-chat in Pennsylvania, and he got out and started drinking again, and she said, well, Ginny, there's 2 women in town. They met at Hazelden Treatment Center. They fell in love with each other. They divorced their husbands. They live here in town, and they've started a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Will you talk to them? And I said, yes. So that night, when I got home from work, the phone was ringing. I picked up, said hello, and this woman said, hi, my name's Bee. We've heard about you. Can we come over? And I said, yes. And so Bee and Paula came to my house that night. It was a Monday night, and they said, we're from Alcoholics Anonymous, and we know how you feel. And I consider those the 5 most important words anyone ever told me. We know how you feel. They hadn't had a drink one day at a time for over 2 years. And they said, there's a meeting on Sunday night, and we'll come get you. And I said, no, you won't. And I'll get there on my own. I don't know if I drank from Monday to Sunday. I honestly don't know. It's just a total fog to me. But on that Sunday, it was July 13th, 1974. And when I woke up, I said to Sarah, I'm not going to drink today. I'm going to that meeting tonight. And I went to that meeting that night, and I never took another drink. So the way to get, from there to here is you don't drink. I didn't go to treatment. I didn't take antabuse. I didn't do anything. I just stopped drinking. And when I got here, stuttered. I mean, I lost some sort of ability to talk, and so I stuttered all the time. I weighed 185 pounds. My teeth were rotten. They used to pay me to use my mouth for oral exams for dental people. And I had a pair of jeans to my name, and I owed thousands of dollars to the people that I had ripped off, including Indiana University. So I had a bicycle to my name and a pair of jeans, and that was it. And B and Paula said, we're going to be your sponsors. I never knew you got to choose. They said, you're going to be the coffee maker at the Sunday night meeting because people who do service stay sober. And that's the thing I particularly like about this conference this weekend, you know. It's all about service. I mean, it's all about service. I was recently in Dallas speaking down there, and Dr. Michael and I had two newcomers in the back of the car who just, I mean, in and out. And Dr. Michael said to them, do you want to know the secret word? Do you want to really know the word for staying sober? And they're like, yeah, what is it? You know, and he said, service. I mean, and it's just it. You know, people who do service stay sober. And I've been doing it for the last 26 years. You know, I'll be 27 years sober in July 13th, you know, in just a few weeks. And it's amazing to me because I didn't come here and say, whew, I'm so glad I found you people. I've really been suffering. You know, I want this beautiful program. I want to clean up my life. Nothing. I mean, I did not want to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. The people that were in the room were old people, and they had blue rinses, and they were old people. I mean, I missed my peer group, and but I came, you know, and they talked about God, and I said, the only thing I said in my first year of sobriety was, I ain't going to buy this God crap. And one of the women said, well, honey, you can borrow my God until you get your own. And another one said, you can't have mine, he's busy with me. And so, you know, they would just say all these dumb things, and I couldn't laugh. You know, I had lost the ability to laugh. Nothing was funny. I was really tragedina. I mean, it was really a tragic. I would go home after meetings and sit in front of the mirror and try to laugh, and like, oh, you know, just like I just couldn't laugh. It had been so long since I laughed, and I kept showing up every week, and I would try to get out of my commitment. One meeting a week. I mean, and I would call B and Paul and say, you know, this really great Bogdanovich film, you know, the last picture show's on tonight, and so I don't think I'll be coming. And you know, Paul would say something like, yeah, that's really a great movie, but our sobriety is more important, and they would hang up. So, you know, I would go to the meeting, you know, just be, and so I always went, and I never said my name's Ginny, I'm an alcoholic for a year. And, you know, in Indiana, they do the same thing they do in Texas, where they say, you know, my name's Ginny, I'm an alcoholic, sober today through the grace of God and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the way of life. You people taught me how to live. I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since July 13th, 1974. And I came to AA and I'm listening to all this. I'm like, oh man, I mean, I can't do that. I mean, I wouldn't even say that I was an alcoholic until I was a year sober. And when I was a year sober, I spoke. And they gave me a cake, and the cake had a dump truck and a stop sign on it, you know, and one candle. And I still rode that bike. I rode that bike 7 miles to work, you know, and back. And then finally, you know, I was an assigned risk for a year. And then my mother bought me a car. And my sponsor said, you're going to pay your mother back every month. On the first of every month. You don't slide on payments to your mother. You're going to pay her for that car. I had to pay my mother for this car. It was a Javelin. It only went forward. It had no reverse. And I would drive it, you know, all the way up to Indianapolis to a meeting, which was 60 miles one way, because I was, you know, looking for my peer group. And I would go up there Monday, Tuesday, Friday. I mean, I went up to Indianapolis all the time. And I was listening to this great step meeting today, and they were talking about the fourth step, you know, and I did a fourth step kind of with B and Paul, and I filled out some Hazelden guide, but I left out a lot, you know. I thought I was too dirty for Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you really knew what I'd really done, I wouldn't get to stay here. And I met this woman in Indianapolis named Iris, and Iris and her husband Bob had come from the Huntington group in Long Island, and they lived in Indianapolis, and they were sober quite a while. And I never heard Iris talk about anyone or anything, and I thought, she's the woman that's going to hear my fourth step. And they said it time and time again, if you skip this vital step, you may not overcome drinking. So I realized if I didn't do a fourth and fifth step, I would probably get drunk. And I did a fourth step when I was 2.5 years sober. I did, legal pad, all the 7 deadly sins, and I went back to teaching school. And I got a job teaching in inner city Indianapolis, an all-black school. It was fabulous. And then the next year I went to a gifted class. And that year I had a girlfriend in Indianapolis, and we saw that in the back of the grapevine they list all the conferences, and one of them was a gay conference in San Francisco. So I said to Jill Judy, let's go. So we went away to San Francisco to this conference, and I came back and I had this Living Sober t-shirt on, 1978, and there was this guy, in the room, with the big beer gut. And he said, well, I was out there. I said, well, when were you there? He said, well, I was there last week. And I said, well, I was there last week too. And he said, well, I didn't see you at any meetings I went to. And I said, no, I guess we didn't go to the same meetings. And then he turned to the guy next to him and he said, Tobe, there was one of those parades, with all these queers marching down the street, and 250,000 people showed up to look at all those queers. And I just sort of recoiled as if from a hot flame, and I moved back across the room, and I turned to this woman, Lee, and I said, I hate that SOB, blah, 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 blah. And I was all red, but I wouldn't say anything. And she said, well, Ginny, maybe it's time you have to do something about that. And so I started the first gay meeting in my house in Bloomington, Indiana, and so many kids showed up. The house literally sank, and the foundation sank, and the dykes had to take off that front screen door so people could leave, and they got out those tools. And then so we finally, we went to churches, and the churches wouldn't take us. They thought it was great. We wanted to do something about our drinking, but what about that other problem? We said, well, we don't see it as a problem. They said, well, we do, and you're not welcome here. So, the women's bookstore took us, and on it went. And 1979, I was invited to come out and speak at Living Sober, and I did, and, I've been in the Bay Area ever since. And I don't go to gay meetings anymore. I stay in the center of the lifeboat. My story is my story. It doesn't change, I'm just very comfortable with who I am today as a result of coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. When I finally told my little Friday night step meeting, nobody had come out, so to speak, in Indianapolis, and I said, well, I want you to know I'm queer, I'm a lesbian, I'm gay, I used every bad word, and they all came up to me after the meeting and said, well, we knew anyway. But we don't care. Nobody really cares. It was just all in my head. And, I came to San Francisco, and I wrote back to my students and told them why I had left. I said, I left because I'm tired of living a lie, and I'm gay. And, the kids wrote back, dear Mrs. Peacock, we knew anyway. So it was sort of, they all knew. Even my mother, when I got around to telling her. And today, it's not, I'm not an alcoholic because I happen to be, gay. I'm not an alcoholic because my husband beat me. I'm not an alcoholic because my father was, abusive. I'm an alcoholic. Maybe, I had a genetic predisposition. I don't know. And it doesn't matter why I drank. All those years I went to all those doctors saying, why? Somebody help me. Why do I drink so much? Only when B and Paula came to my house that night, and I said, why? Why do I drink so much? And they said, we don't care why you drink so much, but we can tell you how to stay sober. And that's all you need to know. And it's honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. You take the body to the meetings, and the rest will follow. And doing service. And, so my life has been pretty fantastic in my journey of sobriety. I I became a realtor in San Francisco like in 1981, so I've been a realtor. I've had the same profession for 20 years, and I love it. I mean, it's the one thing that's remained constant in my life. I mean, lovers have come and gone. I still haven't done really well in that department. When I got sober, B.M. Paula said to me, you know, Ginny, I mean, I was dragging home everything, you know, guys, men, women from the softball team. It was just, and B.M. Paula said, you know, Ginny, we don't think that relationships are your forte. So why don't you see if you can find somebody to help and take them to the meeting this weekend? You know, and when I was living in Indianapolis, I used to call up Iris all the time, you know, and I, me, mine, and whine. It was like the whine 1-1 call, and she would just say, you know, Ginny, your self-absorption is driving me crazy. She said, don't call me back until you found someone to work with. And she hung up. And I went and found someone to work with, and I started taking them to meetings, and that's the way it's been. And I've had sponsors my entire sobriety. My sponsor today is Clancy I in Los Angeles, and he's been very helpful to me. He's been my sponsor for like the last 7 or 8 years, and I broke my neck in 1997 in a car accident down on Devil's Slide going home, you know, where I live in Montera. And they drilled one of those, you know, halos into my skull, and you know, by the time I got to the hospital that night, before they drilled the halo in, you know, my little sponsee, Hannah, was there. And, you know, they came and, you know, I broke C3 and C6 top and bottom. And they drilled that halo in, and I had to wear it for 2.5 months. I sold real estate the whole time. I mean, it was like my best year ever. Except for the last 2 years. I mean, the last 2 years were like a boom town. But, I mean, I had a girlfriend in Oakland, and I would ride into town with her because I couldn't drive because I couldn't turn my head. And I would go down to Saks Fifth Avenue with her, and then I would go down to BART, and I would take BART out to the Balboa Park Station, and I would take a bus through Ingleside over to Stonestown. I'd walk 1.5 miles to my office, and I would work. I mean, I was willing to go to any lengths to get to work. I'm my only contributor, you know. I'm self-supporting through only my own contributions. So if I don't work, I don't eat. And, you know, I was willing to go to any lengths to stay sober, and I'm still willing to go to any lengths to stay sober. I was always told I can't say no. I mean, I don't like to speak. I mean, I have to tell you, I don't send tapes out. I don't audition. I don't want to go to, you know, this place or that place to speak. I mean, I always say yes when I'm asked because I was told that we don't say no in Alcoholics Anonymous except to a drink. And when I say I never want to drink again, I never want to drink again, and I will do whatever it takes to stay sober. And this girlfriend I've been with for like the last 6 years, she has 2 daughters that are 15 and 17 now, teenage kids, and they're nice kids, and they don't drink or do drugs, and they're sort of a rarity in their school. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I was just bratting out all over the place. I mean, I wanted to come first, and the kids came first, and I couldn't stand the kids coming first because I'm a self-centered, self-seeking, self-absorbed alcoholic, and I wanted her to pay more attention to me. And so I would be complaining about it to Clancy, you know, and Clancy would say, you know, Ginny, those kids, all they have is their mother. And if you cannot let those kids come first and let those kids have their mother, then you need to get out of the relationship. And, you know, my girlfriend was not in the program, but she was drinking and lying about it because, you know, I said, you know, if you're going to be with me, you're not going to drink. And for all kinds of reasons, I got out of the relationship. I just took a year off. And I got back with her a year ago. And the first thing that came to my mind was, I know I have to make amends to those girls. And I went to see each one of them separately and said I was wrong. You know, I regret my behavior. I was just so selfish and self-seeking. I mean, I could not, I was just jealous. And I'm sorry I brat it out. And Emily said, well, you know, you made my mom cry a lot. And I don't think we ever know how much harm we do, when we're acting out all the time. And, we come to Alcoholics Anonymous and it's like you bring the drunken horse thief here and you sober him up. What do you have? A sober horse thief. And, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous completely selfish, self-centered, rotten, brat alcoholic, and they sobered me up, and I was the same. But as a result of doing the steps, I've gotten better, and I don't act as badly as I used to do, although I'm not perfect by a long shot. And, there's some great things that have happened to me in sobriety. My mother was 25 pages of my 4-step. I hated her. It was, I resent my mother. She's this, she's that. She never told me she loved me. I didn't like her. She always sent me money. She never could talk about anything but the weather. And it was just on and on and on. And Judy Fritz got the best mother, but I didn't like my mother. And I did the 4-step with Iris. And when I got done with the 4-step, Iris said to me, Ginny, you got the mother that you got. And she loves you the only way she knows how. It's just not the way you want. And my mother went on my 8-step list, and then for the next 20-some years, I made amends to her. I made living amends. She lived in Florida. I would go to Florida to see her once a year, and then it became like 4 times a year. And I wore clothes that she would like. I left the jeans with the ass out and the knees out. I left them at home. And I quit saying the F word every 4 words. And I was nice to her friends, and I acted right when I went there, and I sat with her, and she got progressively sick over the years, and I would sit with my mother, and the last year that she was alive, and I would sit with her watching television, and she would suck her teeth, for like 4 hours, and I thought, I'm gonna, and I would just say, Mother, I'll be right back in a minute. And I would go into my bedroom, and I would get out a pad of paper, and I would write a 10-step. I would write God. I was on my mother. She continues to suck her teeth all the time. She's making me mental. I can't stand it. She's this, she's that. And then I got to the fear underneath, because anger only masks fear, and under all my anger was my self-centered fear. I have fear I'm going to act out again. Fear I'm going to slam the door. Fear I'm going to tell her off. Fear she'll die. And then I will have been nothing but a brat again, because that was my M.O. I used to just brat out, slam the door, I'm going, and they wouldn't find me for 6 months. And when I was around, even in sobriety, people were like walking on eggshells because I was such a lunatic. And so I would go in and I would write this all down, and then I would write, I am now entirely ready for you, God, to remove these resentments and fears. Please remove them. I pray only for the knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry it out. Thank you. Amen. Ginny. So it was like all the steps, 3, God, 4. And I would come back and I would sit down next to my mother, and she'd say, well, what's wrong? I'd say, oh, nothing. I just thought of something I had to do for work. And I could sit then with her because I had gone to the solution, given it up to God, and sat and was able to be with my mother. And then my mother did die in 95, and she got really sick in the month of May, and I flew to Florida because, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we do what's the right thing to do, and Iris always said, right feelings follow right action, and I was there for a month, and my mother had 4 surgeries, they amputated a leg, she was still dying with a great deal of dignity, and, I was acting out all over the place, but I showed up every day for her at the hospital, and before my mother died, she said, Ginny, you've been a good daughter. And she said, will you please try to have a relationship with your brother? I call my brother down from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's a Republican, and his wife sells Mary Kay. And so here comes my brother, in his plaid shorts, and and I never spoke to my brother my whole life. Whenever it was Christmas, I would ask my mother, well, what does Bill want? I would never call my brother and ask him. I hated him. When I was a kid and I had to pour his milk, I'd spit in it. And so here I am. I'm calling my brother down to Florida. My mom is dying, and I have to be with him every day for like 30 days. And I had to talk, and I had to be like a sister, like, well, what do you want to do for dinner? And, and we started to talk, and so the healing began, we began to be like a brother and a sister. And, my mother was on a ventilator, and ultimately we had to unplug her, and she did die. And my brother called me and said, well, we're going to have a service, on July 13th. in Kendall, Indiana. And I said, oh, my God, you know what day that is? And he said, yeah, it's a Thursday. And I said, no, that's the day I got sober, like 21 years ago. And so I went back, and I spoke about my mom, at the service, and it was like so good to be back, and I went to a class reunion. And, I did the right thing. And, recently this old guy named Erwin Karp, who was Secretary of Central Office in San Francisco for a while, I used to call him Dad. He would always go to the home group on Saturday night at 22nd and Guerrero. And Erwin and I rode up to Vacaville together for 10 years, once a month. And we never missed. And, when I came to San Francisco in 1979, I rushed right out to get an H&I commitment, and telling Erwin, I used to go to the women's prison in Indianapolis, and he wouldn't give me a commitment for 2 years. He said it was really sick. And I guess I was, but finally they gave me a commitment at the psych ward, and I love that commitment. And you're sitting in there telling your story with some guy, and it comes every month, and you're writing the juicy part of your story, and the whole room just gets up and walks out. And, they come back in and they interrupt you, and, hey, you got a cigarette? And, this was back when you could smoke. And then ultimately I got the job at Vacaville, and I went up there with Erwin for 10 years, and we became really good friends. And I called him my dad, and he got sick recently with lung cancer. He was a big smoker, just in case you're all wondering what you're going to do when this meeting's over. He got sick, and he was in this convalescence center in San Francisco, and I started going to this Sunday Big Book meeting because I was dressed up, because it was Sunday, and I'm a realtor, and I looked nice, and so I would go to this Big Book meeting, and I would go around the corner and see Erwin every Sunday, and I'm sure I made his day, because I would just walk in, and, they're all lined up, at their chairs with their bibs on, and, Dad! And I took him a bunch of gifts on Father's Day, and, he said, Ginny, would you go to Marsha's Pippic and get me a corned beef? And I said, sure. When rye, I said, seeds. He went, yeah. But I never got to him because he died on Tuesday, and, I just, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I did the right thing, and I went to see him every Sunday, and I love that. And, I just saw my tailor the other day, and he had told me about 6 months ago that Barbara, the love of my life, the first love of my life, was dying of cancer of the esophagus, and either she wanted me to call or somebody wanted me to call, and I should call her. So I called Bloomington, Indiana, and she was there, and I said, hi, Barbara, it's Ginny Peacock. And she said, oh, how are you? And I said, well, I'm fine. And, when Barbara, after I had broken up with her years ago, she moved to Chicago. She worked for Irv Kupcinet. She wrote a book, and I was part of the book. And she'd flown me to Chicago and put a bottle of booze in front of me and turned on a tape recorder, and everything I said came out in the book. And I hated her for that, and I never did forgive her. And so I called her, and she said, so what's up? And I said, well, my first thought was, I wonder if I owed you any amends. And she said, no. You laughed, and she said, no, you don't owe me any, but I bet I owe you some. And I said, well, I'm sure you do. However, I said, it doesn't matter what she said, well, I don't remember what they are. And I said, me neither. And it doesn't matter what they are, because I forgive you for any of it. And she said, thank you for that. And then we talked about Junior, and Junior was dying. He couldn't stay sober. And, she said, did you call to say goodbye? And I said, no, I'll just say goodbye today, but I'll call you next week. And I decided I would call her on Monday, but Monday came. I thought, no, I got very dramatic. I said, I'll call her on Tuesdays. It'll be like Tuesdays with Maury, and I'll call her every Tuesday. And I called her on Tuesday, and there was no answer. And I left a message, and that night I got a call back that said, Barbara died yesterday. And all I could think of was what Marie Spinner had told me. And Marie died this last year, too, in Southern California. And Alabama Carruthers had been her sponsor. And Marie said, Ginny, you got to pray to be big enough, to be small enough, to be used. And I was just grateful that when I got the call that said, will you call Barbara, I was big enough to be small enough to use. And I gave her the opportunity to forgive her, and it was all clean, and, boom. Everything I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, totally. I didn't know how to act right. I didn't know how to be a daughter. I didn't know how to be a friend. I didn't know how to be a good worker. I didn't know how to be responsible. I didn't know how to keep a commitment. You know, Clancy says, you know, we keep our commitments unless there's a death in the family, and it better be yours. And, I mean, I keep my commitments, and if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm usually early. And, you know, I have a God in my life. I pray to this God. You know, when I first got sober, I just say, you know, to whom it may concern, you know, I need help. I would never say the word God for a long time. And today, you know, I get on my knees in the morning and I say, good morning, God. It's me, Ginny. I'm an alcoholic. I need help today. Whatever your will is for me today, just give me the power and strength to carry it out. Thy will, not mine, be done. Thank you for my sobriety. And that's it. And, you know, I got on my knees before I came down here to speak, and I said, God, you know, help me carry the message. I hope I can help one person in the room today. You know, I have to say, you know, the only thing I can say, which is, my name is Ginny Peacock. I'm an alcoholic. Sober today through the grace of God and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the way of life you people have taught me I live. I have not found it necessary to take a drink since July 13th, 1974, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Thank you for my life.